This show is strictly for educational purposes. The opinions expressed on the show are personal to the individuals appearing in the show and not those of Thinking Tree Ecoholics Private Limited. The show is not intended to offend or defame any individual, entity, caste, community, race, or religion, or to denigrate any institution, person, living or dead. Listener discretion is strongly advised.
Hello and welcome to the Thinking Tree, a talk show where we invite intellectuals and professionals to take their views and opinions on various economic issues and contemporary affairs. Today we have with us a very eminent faculty, professor and head to the Department of Economics and Politics, Dr. Saumya Chakraborty. He
Hello.
is from Visva Bharati Central University, and we are really elated to have you here with us today.
Hello, everybody, and it's a very good morning. Though the situation is not good at all, but life must go on. So with this, we start.
Of course, very well said. So today we are going to talk on the topic of Indian informal sector and various policy responses. Because we know that there has been much debate around informalization and casualization of the labor force. So, sir, the very first question that I would like to ask you is that what has been the pre-COVID scenario of the informal sector, and has it been better or worse?
Actually, before I go into this discussion, I'd like to have a very small 1-minute introduction about, in today's discussion, by informal sector, what do we actually mean?
Right.
So if you really look at the informal sector as a whole, or informal activities, then you should have the overwhelming majority of Indian workforce, because you have to incorporate agriculture as well, because 98% of informal sector is of agriculture is informal. But today's discussion will focus on non-agricultural informal sector. It's not the vast agriculture. We will be having discussions on agriculture, but not main focus. We'll have focus on non-agricultural informal sector like petty manufacturing, petty services like vendors, traders, and a variety of manufacturers like, say, carpenters, cobblers, barbers, and obviously the weavers, which is a fantastic large section. And so manufacturing is very, very large as well. We in cities, we find by informal sector, we generally mean the services, the petty traders, the vendors, the rickshaw pullers, the cobbler, barber, or the shoe shine boy, or in fact the Toto drivers nowadays, auto drivers, Toto drivers in smaller cities.
Right.
So, but that is actually a part. There is a very large manufacturing sector, and I want to clarify certain very important thing that if you look at India, rural informal sector is larger than urban. So what was the situation before the COVID? Because if you look at, we have unfortunately data not till 19 or something, 2019 or something like that. We have comparable data till 2015, 16, like that for informal sector, and the condition was not at all good. In the sense, let me tell you, the basic understanding, if you look at economics discipline, doctrine of the discipline, or the mainstream idea is that, in very brief, if you have growth of the economy, one day or the other, informal sector will either be incorporated within the formal economy, or it will improve. Its condition will improve. Informal will remain outside the modern economy, but its condition will definitely improve, or it will vanish and the people will be incorporated within the modern sector. But unfortunately, nothing is happening in India. And for that matter, nothing like that is happening almost across the global south. If you look at Africa, if you look at Latin America, it's always informal sector is remaining outside. And there is some kind of churning going on, obviously. It's not a static, nothing can be static, but it's a very bad situation. Let me give you some some information.
Sure.
Like if you look at Indian data, just a very brief kind of, then, and India is a very classic case. India has been growing very fast over a long period of time. During especially after 2000, it has grown very fast.
Right.
But in fact, if you look at data of that period, it's very interesting and intriguing, actually. If you look at non-agricultural informal sector, then India is perhaps the largest. That is, share of non-informal sector, the informal activities, informal sector activities, and informal activities within the formal sector also. If you combine, then it's almost the largest. It's 84%. So 84 to 85%, it's ILO data, and it says that 85% is of the non-agricultural activities is informal. It's fantastic. And among the growing economies, it is perhaps the largest. And there are two types of informal activities. One is informal sector as a whole, and another is informal activity, informal kind of work within the formal sector, like say security guards. Nowadays we have security guards in every companies, or in fact in you have gated communities, and there you have lots of security personnel, and these are mostly informally employed. So if you combine these two, then definitely India is perhaps the largest. And it is surprising if you just look at ILO data. But that is one part of the story. The other part of the story is that if you look at Indian data a little deeper, then you'd find that we can compare something like 2000, 2015, 16. And then in agriculture, there were actually around 24, 25 crore people during 99, 2000. And then if you come to 2015, 16, it is around 20 crore. So people have gone out of agriculture. Now, if you are informal sector, then you find that there were earlier 7 to 8 crore people, and now it's 11 to 11.5 crore people. So a lot of people have gone into the informal sector, and this data do not actually consider construction. If you, unfortunately, that is separated in Indian data, in NSS, we don't have clubbing together. Informal sector the data don't incorporate the construction data, but if you put it, it's fantastic. So, and if you look at formal manufacturing, so how much is the informal sector? It's around 2015-16, it is more than 11 crore. And if you look at organized manufacturing, it's barely 1.5 crore. It's less than 1.5 crore. Organized manufacturing, if you look at. Services, it's a lot of employment, but that is also, if you combine everything together, all other things. So you have agriculture, you have informal sector, manufacturing and services, and then you have organized manufacturing. And after that, if you combine everything, formal services, informal services, construction, if you add up everything, you will get 12 crore. So just think about informal sector, leaving aside construction. And if you add construction, it will be like 15 crore or something like that. It's a fantastic. It's almost, now it's 20 crore is agriculture, and around 12 or 13 to 15 crore, most probably 15 crore is, if you incorporate construction, 15 crore is informal sector. And that is a very big situation. But I think I would add something to that also, because people might think, oh, what's the problem? Because people are going out of agriculture and going in informal sector, then they are better off. Then why are you saying that the condition is not good? That's why we have to look at the condition of informal sector, and it's miserable. Here you have to look at the data a bit carefully, and it's a very aggregative data, I'm telling you, but if you go inside, you'll get, in fact, more complex scenarios and more intriguing facts, and at times surprising. You won't believe that if you look at 2015-16 data, and if you take recent prices, that is, you update the data with at recent prices, that is, you adjust it accordingly. Then roughly in agriculture, taking into consideration the whole of agriculture, the large farmers, and also the other hand, there are very petty farmers. Combine everything. Then the average income is something like 10,000 rupees per month in agriculture. But if you go to informal sector during 2015-16, then what was the scenario? Informal sector was having even less than 7,000. Or 7 to 8,000. I'd say not less than 7,000. It's 7 to 8,000. It's less than 8,000 actually. So when agriculture, you are getting around 10,000. In informal sector, you are getting even less. But if you look at other sectors, it's fantastic. It's like lakhs of rupees actually. But so I repeat, in agriculture, it's monthly 10,000 rupees on an average, considering everyone. Then in informal sector, on an average, it's less than 8,000. There are certain units, definitely many units who are better off. But a very large segment, especially the self-employed, who are extremely worse off. Now the question, this is the last thing I would add. Question is, why then informal sector is growing? If it is in a worse off situation compared to agriculture. From agriculture, people are pushed out because of crisis, we know. Everybody knows. Everybody acknowledges nowadays that Indian agriculture, and for that matter, agriculture in the global south, is in deep crisis. And people from agriculture are pushed out, and they are bound to get engaged in the informal activities, a very large part, especially the rural services, petty people who sit beside the highways and sell something which is meaningless, but it is adding something to their domestic income, household income. So this is a very pathetic scenario, I would say. If you look at data, people don't look actually, especially sitting in the cities, they look at informal sector around them in Mumbai, in Kolkata, in Delhi or Chennai, and they find that it's great, but it's not like that. Especially if you go to rural India, if you look at the self-employed, it's like horrible. So that was the scenario, unfortunately.
Quite an insight, an intriguing insight on that for the informal sector. Over here, I would like to say that whenever we talk about shifting of agricultural employees to different informal sectors, there's a vast component of skill sets which have to be matched. And on the similar lines, I would like to know that the informal sector has a lot of parameters or indicators which must be kept in sight to analyze the performance in that sector. So also enlighten us about these indicators and parameters which are used, and even like statistically, what has changed in the informal sector, like you said?
Actually, a few things I have already mentioned, like you have to look at to understand, first of all, what is very important, I would say the big thing, that you need to have a very good data. We used to have some kind of data, like we have good informal sector surveys in 99-2000. Then we had some kind of survey in 2010-11 and 2015-16. But after that, we need to have, especially in the post-COVID scenario, we need to have what is extremely important, fantastic data from, say, collected by, say, NSSO, National Sample Survey Office, which or something like that. And it has to be a large sample data, and no researcher individually, in fact, not even any institution or university will be able to do that. We don't have that kind of infrastructure. Universities, no university can do that, not even foreign universities, for a country like India. So you need to have data on employment. You need to have data on number of units. You need to have data on how much assets they are using, productive assets. Need to have data on what is the employment pattern, self-employment or hired labor, what type of hired labor, skilled or unskilled, they are using. And then you definitely need to have gross value added for these firms. So these are the things so enterprise number, employment, total gross value added, unit level or farm level value added, farm level asset position, farm level labor intake, labor absorption, be it household labor, or hired labor separately you need to have, and you need to have asset accumulation, whether these firms are accumulating assets. You'd find for largest part, for larger and largest part of this sector, actually there is very little accumulation. They are maintaining their standard for years together. So actually their target is not, it's very interesting, they're not farms. They are farms, I'm sorry. They are farms, but they're not farms simultaneously.
Right.
Because objective is not profit maximization. Their objective is actually survival.
Right.
So they want to survive. For that they produce. This is a very interesting character. It needs to be exploited. And we need all those data, that whether how much accumulation, and I'm sorry, I forgot one thing, that you have to have data on what they are doing with this income, how much they are spending on asset accumulation, how much they are spending on consumption, whether they are becoming better off, whether they are getting this, there is uplift of condition of their standard of living, there is any uplift, or they are actually remaining at the same level, keeping, if you have the real, that is the, if you remove the inflation factor, then these are the important things. And what you find, as you were asking, what is the change? Very precisely, there is a kind of dual structure in the rural economy as well as in the urban economy, which is getting proliferated. So it's instead of resolving the problem of dualism, we are actually having a proliferation of dualism. And it's very intriguing that if you go to the rural economy, people are going out, as I told you, going out of agriculture and getting involved in rural informal activities. But there are 2 types or 3 types of informal activities. One type of informal activity is meaningless almost. It's highly meaningful for them. But for the economists who calculate always growth, accumulation, whether there is asset accumulation, productivity, it's almost meaningless. Very low productivity, even lower than agriculture. But people, a large number of crores of people are getting, millions of people are getting their petty income from there. They may be adding something to their household income, which is basically coming from agriculture. But they are adding. But there are people who are being evicted from agriculture, suffocated. There's job, there is crisis. So they're going to that kind of sink. That is a sink, very low kind of, very, very, very petty kind of work. But there are other sectors which are growing, which are tagged with the modern sector, so-called formal sector. And that kind of informal sector is also growing in the rural economy. So that is there. And in urban economy also, this is this kind of. So I would say in one sentence, contrary to the general belief, the usual belief that there is actually proliferation of dualism instead of its mitigation. In rural economy, it's no more industry agriculture dualism. Within industry, if you take formal, informal, then within informal, there is a kind of dualism. Some better off informal and some worse off informal. In the rural economy, in the urban economy. And I have been doing this. I've been actually working with this for last almost 20 years. And it's extremely surprising to me that people are there who are writing on this. Definitely there are. But a lot more needs to be done. And here is the scope for the students. A fantastic area. And you know, when urbanization is taking place in India, and the speed is unprecedented, people are going out of the rural economy to the urban economy. And you know, from your Harris Todaro kind of framework also, though there is some problem with that framework, but people go to urban economy and a very large part get engaged in informal sector.
Right.
So we have a lot of literature on agriculture. We need lots of literature on informal sector now.
Right.
So
absolutely.
Students, researchers have a fantastic scope here. So you can, through your organization, you're doing a nice job and you can induce students to work in this direction.
Most
be it the civil service or be it academics. You can
Definitely, sir. Also, something that you mentioned is data and literature. I think which is the need of the hour and is very critical for decision making and policy making. And for that very fact, the overreaching vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat that envisages self-reliance and economic development via vocal for local or make for the world types of approaches. So, how do you think of this Atmanirbhar Bharat to be like the instrumental and decisive factor, and how can the informal sector play a very important role in it?
Yes, actually, you have to understand, as we have been discussing for the last half an hour or so, that the condition was bad. And that is not the only thing that we have to be careful about informal sector. Why it's related to Atmanirbhar Bharat and all these programs, I'm coming to that.
Right.
It was bad, number one. Then when COVID struck, so we have COVID, lockdown, and we have seen that everything is stopped. And this is very interesting for me, a great revelation. In 2020-21, I could understand, many of us maybe, that still it is labor which is running the globe. Because when we locked down, we locked up everything, we locked up the economy.
Right.
And it's labor, because we have a perception that it's machines which is running nowadays. In 21st century, it is the century of machines, etc. It's fine. But if you lock up the economy, then you lock up everything. And sorry, if you lock up the labor, if you lock down the whole economy and the labor cannot move, labor cannot work, then you actually cannot produce. So it's like Hercules, the labor is holding the whole globe on his or her.
Yeah, right.
It's
right,
Hercules. So it's still labor in the 21st century. You have to understand this. Now, given this, what are the other things which has happened? So, and especially during COVID and lockdown, there is an unprecedented expansion of those things like online transactions. And there are other things like vertical reintegration. People have started saying about, since 2007-8 global crisis, deglobalization. It's not globalization, it's reversal, because people are winding up something like that. It's happening across the globe, though it might. An UNCTAD report, if you look at, you will find all these things. It's not that I'm saying or some researchers are saying. And there is also increased speed of automation. And what does this mean? What do these mean for labor? So actually, informal sector, what was happening? People were coming out of agriculture. They were going to non-agriculture, informal sector, but a part of it was at least getting some advantage for the formal sector. But what COVID has done has snapped that chain, because when you have locked down the economy, locked up the economy, the chain, the formal-informal relationship is snapped, at least for the time being. And then there is, but that is temporary, but everything is not temporary. As I mentioned, deglobalization is taking place. So people are winding up. West is winding up. And that means what? The people, a large part of the informal sector was getting benefit from subcontracting. But that is squeezing now. And that is world data. It's not that I'm saying or some people are saying. And so it's called vertical reintegration. And there is another thing everybody knows, that online transaction. That means what? You are bypassing the vast chain of your trade, your petty retail. So it's a fantastic chain from agriculture, from petty manufacturing to the household. There is a huge chain of informal activities.
Yeah.
That chain might be snapped or affected, of course. So what do you do with this? You have to engage them. You have to make them Atmanirbhar. You have to engage these people into the economy.
Right.
The earlier paradigm, what I'm trying to say is this, earlier paradigm was trying to think like this: when big companies, big production grows, then it will pull up people from agriculture. We know we are in the field of economics. We are one of the most famous models like Lewis model, which absorbs people from rural economy to the urban economy, or it's agriculture, or petty, to be precise, petty or traditional sector to the modern sector. But now that is actually snapping. The modern sector is doing its own job. And then what will happen to the in-between? And this is not millions, this is billions. If you look at the global south, billions of people who
Billions.
are actually in limbo. And for them, you need something to be independent, so that they can actually not only survive, but they thrive. And there is always competition from the big corporations because they are here to do business. They are not here to do benevolence. Obviously, there is corporate social responsibility, etc., etc. But after all, they have to do business. So there is always competition. So what I'm trying to say, think about Lewis. Go back to Lewis, students or researchers. And we were thinking of just people moving from agriculture, or to be precise, traditional sector to the modern sector. They will jump.
Yeah.
But this whole thing has snapped because there is vertical reintegration. The formal sector is closing it down because it has understood that it depends on labor. Say, American company is depending on Indian company. No one knows when there is lockdown, everything is gone. Because we are getting very interesting. I was telling to my students during 1920, just at the beginning of this COVID crisis, companies in Korea, Hyundai most probably, was shutting down production because they were not getting parts, the inputs from China. Because China was facing this. At the very beginning, it started in China. We know COVID-19 and all these things, horrible things. So this whole supply line stopped. And they started doing it in-house, or initially they had to stop. And all these things, global crisis to COVID crisis, it is pushing big capital, big corporations, big production houses, which are the powerhouses actually of the global economy, to be more secluded. Because it's their own benefit. They definitely they would look at that. And in between this agriculture and especially the non-agriculture, what will happen to that? And we need to do a lot for these people. And there comes the question of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And we have to design certain programs so that these people really not only survive, not only becomes Atmanirbhar, but also if you read Gandhi very carefully, we have a bad impression, a bad understanding that Gandhi always talks about enclosed rural economy. Definitely not. You read, you'll find Gandhi is telling after meeting local needs, if you produce surplus, go for trade.
Right.
For trade, it's clearly written. There is nothing hazy. So if you read Gandhi a bit, you'd understand that. So it's like that. So you become independent. You become very comfortable in your own position. You produce something and then go for grow local, go global.
Right.
So that is possible. That is possible if you have a fantastic, very intelligent and comprehensive program towards the informal sector.
I would definitely like to make a quote here that every problem contains within itself the seeds of own solution. So then what are the short run and long run requirements to reduce this vulnerability?
Yes, that's good. The COVID actually has given us a lot of chance. You know, if you read A Tale of Two Cities, it is the worst of times, it is the best of times. Why it is so? Because when destruction comes in, when destruction happens, you have a scope to rebuild the economy.
Absolutely.
And that is the scope you have for, which is in a very bad situation now, agriculture, informal agriculture and informal non-agriculture. You have a scope to rebuild it, to give it a new shape in the new world. Nobody will object, because if you build it, if you try, experiment, and if you try to build it, nobody, because it is in a very bad shape. Whatever you do from government, from NGO, and even if the researchers are researching and doing their own and giving their own ideas, new ideas, there's no problem. Everything is welcome now because it's in shambles. Now, immediately what these people in agriculture and non-agriculture, especially non-agriculture, because why especially non-agriculture? Because agriculture, you have at least some fallback option. You have some food. You can grow it, some access. But non-agriculture, purely non-agricultural informal sector is in limbo. There's nothing. You can't go to the urban because people are coming out. Migrants, I just got information last night. Everybody actually, some 8 lakh people have left Delhi in this period of lockdown through public buses. Through only public buses, 8 lakh migrant workers have gone to Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, and all these things. Mostly, maybe some people have come to West Bengal as well. Now, so what to do with these people? They are not being able to go back. Now, here comes a very sensitive suggestion from my side, which has been suggestion from many people, and it has been already introduced in the US by the Biden administration, that you have to initially, at the very beginning, transfer food and transfer cash to the units. And whenever I say transfer cash, people, there will be inflation. Now, here, economic students will have to be very careful. You have to understand, when you transfer cash to producers, petty producers, not large producers, it has a different meaning. Don't jump into conclusion, rather jump into your basic textbooks. So what you find there, these are petty producers and petty consumers simultaneously. They are not only petty producers. They are not only petty buyers. When you give them money, and they have their own rationality, they have their own dynamic rationality. After all, they have to survive tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So if they consume this whole thing today, whatever cash they get from the government, then tomorrow nothing will happen. They will not survive. So they distribute, and it is clear from our own surveys also, not my own, the academia, that whenever you get some cash in times of crisis, initially they will definitely go for some consumption, but they will keep this money for future production also. They will put some money in production, because we are not talking about big corporations. We are not talking about a person like me, who is a worker in the formal sector. Give money, I can't decide what will happen to my corporation or my university. That is not my prerogative. It is by my managers or the vice chancellor in my case. But I can't take decision. But these are very interesting. Millions of people take decisions simultaneously. They maximize, if you look at economics textbooks, it's very intriguing. Simultaneously, they are maximizing profit as well as utility, if you say something like that. It's not like that. Actually, they are simultaneously using the money for production and consumption, which is generally not done in undergraduate textbooks, because your consumption and production are separate.
Different things.
And then you have the market where you have the buyers and sellers meet. But these people are simultaneously buyers and sellers. When we have macro, we write like this: a farm and a household, and an individual is part of household and part of farm. It's not like that. When I am a part of a farm, I don't take decision. Decision is taken by the entrepreneur, the manager, the organizer. We call land, labor, capital organization. That organization is different. But here, this man or woman who is say there are many women also in weaving, and we have our own data that mostly it's men, though. These men and women, when they get money, they put this money in production as well as consumption. So going back to your undergraduate first semester, your demand curve shifts, your supply curve shifts, so that there's not any guarantee that there will be inflation. So cash transfer and before that, some states have already started doing that. Even in the first wave, during first wave it happened. During second wave, it is also happening. Transfer of food, ration. In West Bengal, it is called ration. That is ration at the doorsteps. At least in the neighborhood, they have started distributing. But these are bits and pieces. These are very small attempts. It has to be made much widespread across India in times of crisis. And then you have to transfer. And our Biden administration has shown who are actually the whole of academia, the environment, the academic environment, the academic spirit is against cash transfer. But there it has happened. Last a few days back, we had an information from New York Times that Texas may be restricting transfer. That is politics. Transfer of cash to people. Texas. If you just 1 or 2 days back, yesterday or in New York Times, there was a news that there's a piece of article that Texas is trying to restrict transfer of cash. But that is a big debate that's going on. So if they have done that, have to do that. First of all, that is very short run strategy.
Right.
But this is short run, that so that they survive, not only survive, the demand and supply both are relaxed.
Right.
But in the long run, that is very important. You have to do something to make them Atmanirbhar and eventually grow local, grow and go global. Grow local and go global. Something like that.
Yeah.
For that, you have to go for a different model. And the models are there. And one very important model could be cluster formation. Manufacturing clusters and app-based service clusters. Like in municipality, say I have plumbers. In my town called Shantiniketan, Bolpur Shantiniketan, there are, just for the students, I'm just trying to explain that there are plumbers.
Okay.
Now the municipal body, here we have Bolpur municipality, say they introduce an app where plumbers are all registering. And we have the app. I need a plumber. Then what do? I go through the app and I get the appointment of a plumber, and the plumber comes and do the job. And it has started actually in certain areas. So nothing comes from heaven. Everything comes from life. So people have started doing this. So app-based services, and it has started for retail in a wide way, that there are, you just give a call to somebody and he or she will come and deliver the grocery things at your doorsteps.
Yeah.
So these have started already, but people are doing this on their own for survival, just to be organized. So cluster is very important, and government with the help of NGOs, that can be, and other civil society organization, community-based organization, that should be a very important method for organizing services, because otherwise services are scattered. And manufacturing, you have to, if you have SEZ, especially economic zone for big corporations, why not SEZ for micro units? So that you can relocate, and if you relocate, what you have, synergic effects. Synergy means science. People know 1 + 1 is greater than 2.
Yeah.
So you have, being petty, you can have advantages of large scale production, large scale, the scale economy, scale effects.
Yes.
So you can have scale effects. You are combining together. You are coming together. You are not. It's not cooperative. Individual ownership is guaranteed. You are just going to a collective space where you are not the space to sell. That is, this is not your private property. This is, you are going there and you are sitting there and producing.
Working.
And you have interaction among labor. You can share your knowledge. You can share your instruments. You can share your labor, and you can bargain together for market. You can bargain together for inputs. You can bargain together for output market, for price, a better price. So cluster-based development, and when things are in shambles, everything is shut down. Then if you go, in fact, in my own research, I have asked people that you are here, you are saying that your business is, I was talking to some forging and fabrication units in different parts of West Bengal, that you are not happy with if the government gives you a space where everybody come together and comes together, all of you go together, and collectively it's not cooperative, and you have everything together, like you have infrastructure, you have electricity,
facilities,
you have, so, and that is going on. It's there. Right. It's already cluster-based development is a model, and you have to actually improve it so that they become powerful, they become Atmanirbhar, they become self-reliant, and then they can fight in the global economy as well.
Right.
So it's possible.
Absolutely. Dr. Saumya, it was actually immensely enlightening because of the lucid way in which you have, I think, incorporated all these various tiny implications of concepts, and not just the students who are UPSC aspirants or civil service aspirants or going for any other competitive examination, but also all the listeners who are genuinely interested in economics and how the economy functions. I think they're going to thoroughly enjoy this session. Coming to the close of the session, I would really, from the deepest of my heart, I would like to thank you, sir, for coming to the platform and to give us really valuable insights about economics.
What you have been doing, I was just going to few of your Thinking Tree videos. These are available online.
Yeah.
And some of the stalwarts like Viral Acharya, Professor Ramesh Chand, and many others, actually. Many people are talking about Indian economy, and some are very, very enriching, and students, civil servant aspirants, service aspirants, or researchers, they would be extremely benefited. And also nice talking to you, because after all, the intellectuals would love to see how their ideas travel. That is their objective of doing research.
Right.
So this exchange is very interesting. So what you are doing and this dissemination, I hope, will create kind of broad, not only awareness, but also interest in all these issues.
Definitely. So that's the hope.
It's people's life matters. So these people's lives matter. So that is the fundamental thing that is important. So even if you are in civil service, if you have this idea of the comprehensive idea about the global economy, Indian economy for that matter, then you will definitely be a good performer, not only in your interviews, but also in your actual service life.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for this session, and have a great day, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.